mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings.
I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
My name is John Gordon. I'll be your host.
And I'm your host, Katie Burke.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, John Gordon. It's November, everybody. The duck seasons, goose seasons, rolling all over the countryside. We're going to open up down here in Arkansas soon. Tennessee, Mississippi, the last of the seasons to open. Everybody else is pretty well going at this point. And my subject and my guest today, we're going to talk about something that is on everybody's mind at this point in time, and that's duck calling, and specifically, what calls to use, when to use them, how you get great at it, how you become better at it. We're just going to really dive into all these different subjects, and my guest today is 2009 World Duck Calling Champion Mike Anderson. Mike, welcome to the DU Podcast.
Hey, what's up, Gordo? How are you, man?
Man, I'm awesome, dude. Well, folks, you'll be able to see this on DU Nation, where we hunted with Mike in his stomping grounds, really on the Missouri River, and it was a great time.
That's right.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
Hey, man, thanks for coming. Yeah, it was. It was one of those special times where the birds kind of show up. We zigged when we should have zagged here and there, but man, we still got to see a pretty good show. That's for sure.
Yeah, it really was. We hit the migration right. That big front had hit North Dakota, and those birds were spilling out in big numbers, and it really was really a pretty cool deal to see all that. The migration is an incredible thing anyway, and to be in the middle of it is really special.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Anytime you see a snow in the forecast in North Dakota, Montana, and Canada, it's like rally the troops, man. Fill up the gas tanks and hop on the trucks and head to the river. It was worth the trip, man. It was one of those days where they show up overnight and you're driving through the main river channel and you're running snow geese and ducks out of the main river channel.
That's right. We got that all on film too. It was just, there was a tremendous amount of birds right there in the middle of the river, which are not normally there unless they've just gotten there. And so that was really some pretty cool footage. Mike, let's go back in time a little bit.
Yes, sir.
You're from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And how'd you really get started in waterfowl hunting?
Well, waterfowl hunting, it was definitely a family thing for me, and we hunted everything. And I always use the analogy that my dad was a deer hunter that duck hunted, and we started around 8 years old. But really, got me hooked is I had an uncle that moved to Texas in the early 80s, like 81, 82, somewhere around there. And what he used to do is buy me and my cousin DU Green Wing memberships. And then he would come back up from Texas and tell me all stories about the ducks that he would shoot down there. And he would just fuel the fire of me being a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old up here in Minnesota shooting a ringneck and a wood duck kind of deal. And just really, drove the passion for me to not only, learn how to blow a duck call, but to hunt more and want to hunt more and want to hunt ducks in a real big way.
I got you. I got transplanted to Texas in that same time frame, early 80s. And that was the glory days of the 10-point duck
right
in Texas, because we weren't hunting mallards. I had moved from Mississippi where, it was that's all you ever saw, mallards, maybe an occasional wood duck.
Right.
And now all of a sudden I'm in this wonderland where the pintails are 10 points.
Yeah.
And people are bringing out straps of 70, 80 drakes out of the marshes. And it seems like, blasphemy now, man. But that was the glory days of the pintail populations. But even then, all the ducks just about were 10s. Gadwall, widgeon, teal, they were all 10.
It was crazy. He would come back up and he would visit at least once or twice a year, and he'd bring out Polaroids of pictures that he'd be sitting there. And then me being a little guy that hunted up in northern Minnesota, like I couldn't even wrap my head around what he got to do and what he got to see. And it just fueled the fire for where I'm at today. And the love and desire that I have for it is direct, a direct result of him kind of stoking those flames.
Gotcha. So you're a kid coming up, and of course, every kid that I know or knew wanted to be proficient at duck calling. I mean, that's the big deal, right? You think, man, if I can just learn how to call, they're just going to fall from the sky. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But you think that,
Yeah.
it does make a difference, especially with mallards. Let's face it. I mean, they're the ones you're really trying to work with. We were talking about gadwalls earlier. I'm not sure they can be called with anything. They like to ignore everything.
We call them a lot of things.
Yeah, you call them a lot of things. That's right. But the old gad, my friend. Anyway.
Yeah. So that fueled the fire, and then sometime in the 90s, me and my dad, we got a lease in Western Minnesota, and I was around the time of the spinners first got into it, and we went out there, and that's the first time that I can remember really killing mallards in a good way. And it was like a kind of like an aha moment, like this is what I want to do, and who I want to be. And then I think around 99 or 2000, I went to Game Fair and watched a calling contest there and said, hey, I could do that. And that's kind of where it started.
Obviously started you on a path that you really, took to all the way. I mean, if you're becoming a champion in anything, it takes tremendous amount of dedication. I mean, how long did it really take you before you knew you could go into a contest and win?
Man, that's a loaded question. And I could tell you this, in 99, I went and watched a contest, and I went to a store we had up here called Gander Mountain. And they used to have a little glass call case, and inside that glass call case, there was expensive calls. And there was one in there that was $130, and it happened to be an RNT original. And I bought it saying, well, that must be good. It's $130. And I bought that, and I started practicing on that. And then I ordered a VHS of the, and I'm going to butcher it. I think it's 2000. It's 2001 World's Championship. Me and a buddy of mine ordered that VHS, and we wore that sucker out back and forth. And we used to record ourselves. And, we got to a point where we thought we were pretty good and started entering our first contest and figured out we were not that good. And then just, kind of got back to the drawing board and worked hard. And honestly, from, 2000 to, gosh, I'd say like 2007, 2008, if I were to have an hour meter for how much time, I put in to practicing my call, getting better at my call, being proficient with my call, I would honestly be almost embarrassed to admit to what that hour meter would be. But I bet if you talk to anyone who has had any sort of success in the calling contest world, whether you're a world champion or just a proficient contest caller, there's a point in time where all of us put in an amount of work that is hard to describe. Yeah,
I think it was Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what it takes
to
become proficient or really good at anything.
It's a deal that you get out of it, what you put into it. If some people call it a talent, and I think it's a little bit of a talent. I was a band geek growing up, but I think it's more of a learned skill than it is a talent. If you want to be good at operating a duck call, you can. You just got to put in the sacrifice and the time and really get after it.
Exactly. You brought up a really good point. You had to buy a VHS tape. And I don't think people, that are from the younger generation understand that how little on calling was available then. You had some records or cassettes you could listen to. You had a tape, of a calling contest, where now they just go on YouTube and you just type in anything and pop it up, and you can just sit there and follow along and learn it all.
Man, it's crazy to think the evolution that happened in contest calling and in general, like in life in general, but contest calling. When I first started, I had to get in my truck, fill it up with gas, drive to Peoria, knowing I was going to get my butt kicked. Donate my $50, but it was the only place I could go listen to a Jim Ronquest or Bernie Boyle or any of those guys, and then I go to Kansas City and go to all these regionals, and everybody did. We would have, what I call the glory years of contest calling would be the 2000s. It was, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't a thing yet. And you'd go to Kansas City and there'd be 4 regionals in KC, and there'd be 40, 50 guys in every regional. And you go to Peoria, Illinois, you go to all these places, and it was, Burlington, Iowa, Arkansas, all that. And there was always 40, 50 guys. It was always highly competitive. It was a lot of fun back then. I felt like, I've kind of gotten back into it here recently, and still some of the same guys are into it, and the young guys are good guys, but it's a different feel. Back then it was, these were our friends. This is who we all hung out with for those 10, 15 years. And it was awesome. And it doesn't feel that way. And I think that as a direct result of YouTube, instead of having to go fill up the truck and drive to these contests and go watch these things, if I'm 20 years old, I go on YouTube and I record myself and I can self-evaluate. I can say, well, I'm not ready to compete yet. I'm not going to spend the money on gas. And I think that's where our current status is at.
Yeah, and it's a little sad because that's where you develop real camaraderie with the guys. It was always the same guys on the circuit,
yeah.
At every contest. And you really got relationships with those folks. And once again, like you said, it's just really missing now.
Yeah, there's a disconnect. Some of my closest friends in this world live 1,000 miles away. And I can attribute that to a duck call, and I wouldn't trade those times in for anything. And I feel really bad for the young kids in a way. Bad, I should say, for the young kids that are into it like we were, that don't get to experience like we did. And it's probably the same old guy thing my parents said, about things too. When they look at the young people, they look at, they didn't agree with it or didn't like it as much. So I might be just the crotchety old guy, but I just feel like it's different.
It is. And here's a pretty specific question for you. Say this is 2009, and you're waking up in the morning. It's you're in Stuttgart, and what's it like? What would you do to prepare yourself physically and mentally to go out there and compete at the highest level?
So physically, it would be practice. And at that time, I was kind of at the point to where my practice was more maintenance. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how to do it. I just had to prepare myself to have the wind and strength built up, and then the mental side. So what I would do back then is for the 6 to 8 weeks leading up to the contest, I would pick up my call. I would blow 3 routines. If I blew all 3 clean, I put it down and left it alone. And then mentally, how I prepared, I'm a baseball coach, a little bit like baseball. It's kind of I always say with baseball, if you believe you can, you will. And when it came to blowing a duck call, it's kind of the same thing. Now it's a beauty contest, not a race or a measured thing. So it's like I can't line up next to you, John, and we can't race to the end of this road and beat each other. Duck calling's a little bit different, but mentally I prepared myself in that way where I felt confident what I was going to do. I was going to get up on stage and do what I had practiced and was prepared to do.
Well, that's huge. That's mental preparation, I think, for anything. The belief in yourself that you can do it is everything. Without that, it's just never going to happen. And I think that's what really separates the guys who have been, the top level champions from everybody else.
I think that's a part of it. I think it's a big part of it. I also think, it's the time they put in combined with the confidence that they gain, combined with the tool that they get in their hand. Back when I was really getting after it, I had a stretch where I had a hard time blowing a routine clean. In particular, I remember like 2006, 2007, I went to like 13 different contests, had a lead in 12 of them and squawked out in every one of them and never even qualified. And then what I did is in the January of 2009, I took a hunting trip to Arkansas just to work with Butch Richenback. And he took time and built me a call that fit me. I think it goes 2 ways with that. I think it truly fit me, but it also fit me and made me confident, if that makes sense. Like it got me confident with the tool that I had in my hand to where I could just go out and it was like a broken record. I just I rarely would make a mistake and just had everything that I needed in it, kind of deal.
That's excellent. It's interesting too, how I guess judges play a huge part in this sometimes, because everybody's, they have to know who's blowing the call sometimes, I would think. They've heard it so many times, right?
Yeah.
And they have a preference for what they're listening for. Because, you see some really young champions, a guy like Trey Crawford. I mean, he was a 19-year-old kid.
Correct.
And you got like Buck Gardner. I think it took him 12 tries, before he ever won. So I think it's just perseverance has got to be a big part of being a champion as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And they're willing to I hate using this analogy because it's not necessarily a grind, but being willing to grind through it and understand that you're going to show up and you're going to get cut. You're not going to make third round. And the next one, you could do the same thing and win the dang thing. And I finally got to a point where I tried to structure my routine to where it was good enough where they couldn't deny me at least a decent score. I might not win, but I tried to get it to a point where they couldn't deny me a decent score. And I think ultimately, if you really want to really nerd out when it comes to the scoring system and calling contests, the goal shouldn't be to be everybody's favorite, but the guys that really win with that panel of 5 judges can sing a song with your call that becomes everybody's second favorite, and everyone gives you above average score.
That's it. I mean, and you're spending the money on entry fees and gasoline and everything else. And I'm sure a lot of guys who really could have been somebody in it got dissuaded by it, and you just got to push through it. Like I said, it's a grind.
Yeah, totally. You have to push through it, and I haven't always pushed through it. I took some time away for various reasons. In the 2010s, mostly to coach baseball, but you just got to keep trucking, man. You got to fill the gas tank of your truck back up and drive to the next one.
You mentioned Butch Richenback. Do you think he's the guy who created more world champions than anybody else with his advice, with his tutelage?
In my time, there's no question. I owe my big trophy to him. Now, I will say this with Butch. He wasn't like the teach. He didn't teach me from scratch and teach me how to operate a duck call or this or that, but he just had a way about himself that would get you in line, and a way about himself that he could get a call tuned in a way that you just felt like it was what you needed. And if you look back at all the names, the John Stevens, the Trey Crawfords, the Jim Ronquist, the Brent Easleys, the Jody Nickums, so many different guys that Brad Allens that Butch had a hand in. It's one of them deals. It's weird while you're in the process of it. Like, I love the man to death, and he was really, really, really good to me and helped me a lot. And you didn't realize it necessarily while he was doing it, if that makes any sense. But when I look back at it, I would not be a world champion if not for Butch Richenback. I
think a lot of guys just have. Folks, for those of you who don't know, Butch Richenback was the founder of Rich and Tone Calls, a real Arkansas legend, a disciple of Chick Major. And I'm looking at this box in here that I'm sure be pretty much envy of any call collector. We've got an original box, a display box full of unopened Dixie Mallard calls, retail display box. I don't know what that thing's worth, but it's pretty cool to have it here in the podcast studio.
Man, I tell you what, there's some Facebook sites that would tell you exactly what that thing is worth.
I'm not even sure where they came from. I'm sure somebody probably donated them to us years ago, and
right.
Chick, another guy, and Chick was so great with kids, the Chick and Sophie Major scholarships
right.
and all that. I mean, people just really, the calling world has been good to a lot of people over the years. It's a really unique deal.
It is, and I'm from up north. I'm not from Arkansas, but obviously, but if you look at the history of duck call making and duck calling, man, Arkansas in particular, Stuttgart, in that area, it is the epicenter. There are so many big names and call makers and callers that have come, within 70 miles of that town. It's just incredible. That's who and what duck calling is. And
it makes perfect sense of why. That was the real epicenter of mallard hunting for so long. Was right there in the Stuttgart area. You had people like Slick McCollum and Marion McCollum of Max Prairie Wings, and all these people who really created a real culture of duck calling, duck hunting in that area. So I think that really spawned some of the great callers in the past, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think if we fast forward, another 20 years, I think we'll look at Jim and John in the same, through the same lens as we do those names that you just said. I can attribute a lot of my, calling practice and improvement to those CDs they made. I don't know what year it was, but they had a set of 3 CDs, Foundations for Success, and I forget what the other 2 were called, but I know when you sit and you listen to guys blow duck calls right now, and you listen to guys blow single cuts and this and that, it sounds exactly like Jim and John did in that CD set that they made 25 years ago, that I think a lot of us learned how to operate a duck call on.
It's true. I remember the first time I heard John blow a call, and I think it was on a Whistling Wing video from back in the 90s, and thinking to myself, said, my God, if I could ever learn how to call like that, it would be amazing, because his control is just, it's astounding.
I still listen to his feed call and think the same thing.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of one of them little kid things. When I grow up, I want to blow a feed call like John Stevens.
Yeah, it was great. I've had John on the podcast in the past. We did a DU Nation film at Callapalooza this past summer. That was a really cool event. You got to really see duck calling at its finest and duck call craftsmanship at its finest. And he's got a very cool shop. For anybody who hasn't been to the Rich and Tone shop there in Stuttgart, take a little pilgrimage and check it out. It's very cool.
It's very cool. They've made it into an event. The shop isn't what it was. Now I have a partial bias. I love the new shop. I love the changes that they've made. I mean, they've made it, like I said, into an event. But the shop from 15 years ago on Worlds Weekend are some of my greatest memories. I really enjoyed after the Worlds contest when we go down to the shop and hang out there. Yeah, that was so awesome. So awesome.
Yeah.
And I wish at the time, super special. And I wish at the time, if I could rewind back, I would have made a point to tell John and Angie how much that meant to all of us. Because I don't think, at the time being, all of us, at that time, I can say we were the entitled 20-year-olds, but being the 20-year-old age group, I don't think we necessarily did a good enough job letting them know how big of a deal and how much that meant to us. That was a really cool place to be at.
Yeah. And I know John enjoyed every minute of it as well, being, 3-time world champion of champions.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he did it all, and just what a super guy, too. I mean, just a really kind soul.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a little break on the DU podcast, and we'll be right back with more from Mike Anderson.
Stay tuned to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, after these messages.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. My guest today, 2009 World Duck Calling Champion, Mike Anderson. We've been talking about contest calling and what it takes really to be a champion. Let's talk about the calls for a second, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about contest calls first. What do you think, in your opinion, makes a great contest call? Is it volume? Is it clarity? What do you think?
Whew, man, that's a question. We could sit down. We could sit down and crack some bush lights and really talk at length about that. But if I look at it through my lens, what I like, I think something that has enough volume, but then still has enough bottom end to sound like a duck that you would be comfortable hunting with it. I would say the trend has steered a little bit away from that, but if you can get a call that has enough volume but still allows you to sound like a duck on the bottom end and gives you enough range to do what you want to do, that's what I look for.
And that's the same thing, I think, in a hunting call, too, right? At least for me, it is.
Yeah, 100%. The same rules apply. Honestly, they do apply because, a hail call, doesn't sound like a duck. But I will say this. I still say this. And, my buddy Sean Stahl used to always say this. And I plagiarize him here and there. But, like, when we're operating a call, we're not always trying to sound like a duck. We're trying to trigger a reaction. We're either, trying to get them to hear us from when they're way out or sometimes, if they're starting to bank wide and pitch in, downwind or somewhere left or right that we don't want them to, we might bark at them real hard just to trigger that reaction. I think the same thing, you want in a contest call, you want something that can bark and something that can get loud, get good tone on top, but then you can finish them too. And I just think that sound resonates on stage.
Exactly. It's too for hunting. We talked about this at length as well, that I like loud calls. You like loud calls. You can't make a softer call loud, but you can get softer with a loud call. And I think people really need to focus on trying to really be able to control their airflow to do that.
100%. Like Jimbo kind of blew up the Mondo a little bit, kind of really, expanded duck call making horizons beyond the little niche of the ult just in Arkansas by creating the Mondo. And I hunt in marshes and I hunt on big water. And I blow a Mondo as much as I do a small J-frame call, because exactly like you said, you can blow a loud call quiet. You can't blow a quiet call loud. And those cut down style calls just have that bark that can trigger that reaction and can get out there too.
That's right. I interviewed Jimbo for a article I wrote for Greenhead Magazine on cut down calls years ago, and the Mondo had just really come out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about, what he really thought separated the cut down style call from a J frame was the frequency level, that you could really get that bass note that would carry to a duck's ears a lot farther. And it makes a lot of sense. You can really feel and hear bass like in a stereo system a lot more than treble. Right. You can be 20, 30 feet outside the vehicle and still feel that bass pumping.
Yeah, correct. Agreed. I could not agree with that more. And a lot of the times too, when you duck hunt and depending on your weather, but let's say you've got a 15-mile-an-hour wind and let's say your ducks are 500 yards away or whatever the measurement is. Well, if you add a 15-mile-an-hour wind to a duck flapping its wings, the odds of him hearing you with a regular timber style call are kind of slim. So sometimes you need to bark at him in that bass like Jimbo describes. I just believe in it. In fact, last year I was down there hunting with him at his camp, and there's a couple different places you can hunt there. We had a hole on the tree line on the edge of a rice field, and he was hunting a tree line hole in a slough, and he was, I don't know if I put a measurement on it, but let's say a quarter mile away, and he was blowing his Mondo, and at that distance, it actually sounded like a mallard hen to me from that distance, the way that sound carried and traveled. And I would not say, like, if I stand next to a guy that hits a lick on a Mondo or a cut down style, I don't necessarily resonate that to an actual mallard hen. I think when I'm standing right next to it, it doesn't have that same sound. But when I was that far away, it sounded exactly like a mallard hen.
And that's why it works. I've seen so many mallard drakes, especially single ones, cruising by, not respond at all to a J frame. You hit them with that bark on that Mondo, and man, all of a sudden, boom, they wheel around because they heard it, they felt it, and they just didn't feel the J frame. And I guess explain J frame call versus cut down for people who really don't know. I mean, the J frame is like the standard Arkansas style call, and then what they did with the old calls, they cut them down and made them louder. So explain that for a little bit to the audience there, Mike.
In layman's terms, a traditional J frame style call, when you hold the insert up, and I'm holding one in my hand right now. When you hold the insert up, it is shaped like a J, and I'm not going to be able to tell the length of it, but essentially the reed is shorter and the tone board is traditional. Now, a cut down call, when you hold the insert in your hand, it's still shaped like a J. But what the old guys, the original guys that kind of did this first on the Olds in Southern Arkansas, is they would take that insert and they would cut it off at the end. And then when you look at a cut down style call, the reed is a lot longer, which, I am not I'm not as proficient when it comes to call making as guys that do it, but this is how I think of it in my head. Think of your reed as an RPM. Okay. A J frame calls, the RPM on the reed goes up and down at a faster, smoother rate. Whereas the cut down call is longer and has a slower RPM rate, creating that bass, if that makes sense. And
that just translates into a lower frequency on the cut down, which carries farther in the air. And that's the main difference, folks. You just got to realize that's why the cut down has become such a staple now in the calling world. And a lot of thanks to Jimbo for really creating it commercially.
Yeah, dude, totally. I mean, he obviously he'll never take credit for this because it's just the way that he is. But if you really look at it, and I can't speak for RT or for John, but I'm pretty sure that I have been told that once after the first year of the Mondo, every year since then, the number one selling call maker was a cut down Mondo. That says it in itself. And I know there's other versions like a JJ Lairs, which I don't use, but I've blown them. They have a different method of getting to there, and I'll butcher the science, but they've got an insert and has a different type of reed, but they kind of play with that same type of frequency, and they get there in their own way too.
Yeah, for those that are not really familiar with JJ Lairs, he's a Western guy. So a lot of the Western folks really that's what they use is JJs.
Yeah,
it's calling is kind of cool too in calls because they're regional with them. They like to use a lot of the stuff that is available in their region and their area. So that's a cool part of it as well.
Yeah, it's so cool, man. And the older that I get, the more I appreciate some of that and that side of it where, years ago I might not have as much, and I'm a little bit more fascinated with it, and you probably, you've probably gone through the same thing. I think of all the different calls that I've had over the years that I've either sold or given away or lost or something like that. But that I would love to have back right now.
Man, me too. I thought about that the other day. When I moved to Texas as a kid, the big call, and still a big call in that part of the world, and all over the place, really, is the old Cowboy Fernandez calls. That he made and actually won the world championship in 1959, I believe, with that call. The sure shot calls, and I have no idea where my original sure shot is that I got when I was a kid. And man, I would really love to have it.
Yeah, no doubt. I had an old Soderman 66 that my dad gave me in, I don't know what year, probably sometime in the late 80s, early 90s, and then I'd love to have it. And then in the early 2000s, when I was getting into contest calling, like all the daisy cutters and stuff like that, I can remember I had 2 original daisy cutters that had the clear barrel and the black insert with the skull and crossbones that I don't know, John only made like 50 of them or whatever it was. And I gave them to kids one time when I was doing a youth event. And now I've heard that those things are selling for like $4,000 on Facebook.
That's a whole nother world too. And I learned a lot about it at Callpalooza, the call collector.
Yeah.
I mean, guys were showing me pictures of their call rooms that were just like, my Lord, so elaborate. And they had these cases built into the walls, and they had thousands of calls. And I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I like calls, but man, not that much.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. Like I've got on my lanyard, I've got a daisy cutter that I've had on there since, I don't know, like 2004, 2005, maybe 2003. And I had a guy one time, he's like, "Whoa, you hunt with that?" And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I? He's like, that's a this scroll or that scroll. I'm not even sure what scroll it is. It's like a full scroll something or other. And he's like, "Man, you could sell that for like $700." And I'm like, "What? Really?"
Yeah. I mean, there's nerds and everything, right? You got the call nerds. They know the specific little differences on the barrels and the inserts that make calls more collectible. And I just, like you said, I've been blowing the same daisy cutter I've had to for years, and I wouldn't know what style that is, or if you put a gun to my head.
Right. In a way, it's better not to know. Is kind of the way
better
I look at it.
Better not to know you got a valuable call.
Right. Now let me tell you, if it creeps up above $1,000, someone please let me know.
It's for sale.
Everything. Yeah, that's right, man. Someone will ask me like, "Hey, do you like your fishing boat? Are you selling it?" And I'm like, "Hey, man, everything at my house except for my kids and my wife is for sale. If you're willing to pay me the right price for it, I will gladly sell it."
That's right. Calls have come a tremendously long way, but there's the old metal reed style calls that were really popular, like places like Reelfoot Lake, to the really development of plastics to acrylic calls, and the acrylics have really been the elite calls of the last 30, 40 years. Just because I mean they're a lot more stable than wood, but I love a wood call too, man. I mean, there's just something that just something beautiful. Just like I still shoot a lot of wood stock, blue steel walnut guns. It just it's a little more romantic, I think, to have a wood call.
Yeah, totally. I've got an old Ithaca Model 37 that I hunt every once in a while. Hunt with every once in a while, and it's a wood stock, and it's just pretty. There's just something about it that I like better.
That synthetic stock camo gun, man, just does have it's got no romance. It just doesn't have any character to it.
It's a tool. It's a push ball. It's a decoy retriever, and it'll shoot ducks.
I've got an old metal recall that my uncle's foundation guy. My uncle was a real estate developer, home builder, and a guy named Dick Reed in Mississippi, and I forgot he was another guy that taught him about how to make those calls, and I've still got it, and it's just one of my most prized possessions. I don't hunt with it; it's in my office in a display case because it means a lot to me. But it's a real loud call, and it will turn ducks at a long way. I've seen it. And I think once again, I think it's because it's got a low frequency, and it really has that sound they're looking for.
Yeah. It's just like the same rules apply. We haven't especially in my time. We haven't exactly reinvented the wheel, but I would say what we have done is refined the wheel and maybe put some better bearings and a bigger engine in it. The what works, what ducks react to, has not changed. In fact, right now there's a pretty big comeback of the ensigns.
Yeah, well, the new ownership, and they really have developed, that style call in a modern platform where it, like I said, I was talking about before, but Cowboy Fernandez developed that call back in the 1950s, and they've really taken it to a modern day level now, and I'm sure they're doing well with it.
Yeah, a buddy of mine came and hunted with me, I think a weekend or 2 weekends before you, and he brought one with him, and we messed around with it, and man, it still has that same bass and that same good sound, and it sounds good.
Yeah, that I haven't used one of the new ones. I really, I need an excuse to spend money on duck hunting stuff. I may set to buy one and see what it's like. It's I'm a sucker for something new.
Oh, absolutely, man. You know what? It's half of the fun.
Shoot, for me, a lot of times it's all the fun because I think about duck hunting and stuff 365 days a year, right? And so it never stops. And I'm always like, man, I need to get this, that, and the other, and that's pretty cool. And that's something to go. There's been a lot of big time call makers over the years. Guys like Eli Haydell, you're talking about musicians, right? I mean, his family is big time musicians, and they really developed their love for calls and calling from a background in musicianship. And I think, Eli was a big sax player. And so I think that's a big part of their legacy and what he really brought to the calling table. Those old DR-85s still work pretty good. Oh, man, yeah. And they still have that sound, and they still have that same model, and then ducks still react the same way to it. They sound like a duck, man. Yeah, that's it. Sounds like a duck. All right, we'll switch gears again a little bit on you because we did something that I don't do a lot of, is we hunt out of boats. And your boat setup was one of the cooler setups I've ever hunted out of. And that's because you love to hunt rivers, right? And where did that really start? When did you really become a guy that, man, you look at a river and you just see ducks falling out of the sky? Man, that started, honestly, I'm going to date back. I'm going to say it was Take 'em Volume 2 or 3 when Barney Califf hunted with Buck Gardner on the Missouri River. When I watched that, my eyes were, living up here. See, we don't live, where I directly live. We'll shoot mallards, and we'll have good mallard days. But if we go and shoot 2 or 3 limits of mallards, we may have seen 100 ducks, 100 mallards that day. So we don't see stuff like that. I'm like, man, that's cool. So I built a little 12-foot V hull and put a blind on it and kind of started that. And then a good friend of mine that you knew too, bless his heart, Wayne Salem. Good old Wayne, yeah. Yeah, man, there's a duck hunter. Then there's Wayne. Every duck hunter is looking up to Wayne. Yep. And it's amazing when you go to places and you bring up his name, how many people north to south know who that man was. But so we started with mud motor rigs and pop-up lines, and we have slowly, wanted, we used to think before that, hey, we needed a mud motor to get here and here and here. And we started hunting more and saying, well, we're cold. We don't go as fast, and we're not, cutting through that much mud. So I finally kind of bit the bullet and kind of went all in and bought a 2072. It's a tracker model, 2008, and just started to kind of hack away on it this last summer and put a 115 4-stroke on it. Learned how to weld aluminum. Like I was joking with you, we were in the boat. You can sit in the boat and look at the blind and see where I started the build to where I finished it, because my welding skills got a lot better as evolution of Mike's welding skills. Yeah, you can see it, folks, on the blind there. Yeah. So our theory with it, while we guys have been hunting with them for 20, 30, probably forever, but that we had seen for 20, 30 years. But our theory was, 1, we want to stay warm. 2, we want to stay safe, and 3, I think the boats hide better than those pop-up blinds. You get a completely hard-sided. 100% agreement on that. Because once you got back in those Phragmites, cut some Phragmites, put it in there, and yours is covered in tumbleweeds. Am I correct? That's the outside cover? Yeah, yes, sir. I have a base layer of aluminum sheeting, and then I put a base layer of blind grass camo on it. And then outside of that, I took tumbleweeds and really coated it with tumbleweeds, and just to give it that 3D effect. And my wife always likes to use the analogy, it looks like a chia pet. That's a good one. Yeah, it kind of does. It does, exactly. And then what we do when we hunt, wherever we're hunting, like we hunted in Phragmites that day, we just take the hedge trimmer out, cut Phragmites, stick it in there, stick it in the tumbleweed, and get covered up, get some shadows going over the hunting holes, and
and fire up the Blackstone and cook some food and shoot some ducks.
Yeah, it's a really nice rig, folks. And once again, you can see it all on DU Nation on YouTube. It sounded like an advertisement right there. It kind of did.
It did.
I'm trying to get more viewers,
That's
Mike.
all right.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you're doing a great job, man. I can't wait to see the drone footage.
Oh, yeah. The drone.
Of how it looks from the duck's perspective.
I always love it, too, because I don't know. Zach's seeing it on his phone, but I don't know what it looks like until it comes, he shows it to me later, and I'm always amazed by the things you can see and the things you can see in the distance that you're looking from a bird's eye view. That's been such a huge development in video over the last, because before that, you had to have a plane or a helicopter to get that perspective.
Right.
And now you get it every video, run the drone up, and he was running that drone right there with us, running down the river too, and that's got to be really cool.
Yeah, it's got to be super cool. Yeah, man, it was a pleasure getting you guys out there, and I just love hunting out of that boat. It's funny. Every time I look for ducks now, I look for a boat ramp. I'm like, can I get the boat down there or not?
Can I get the boat in?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's making me soft, but it's just making me, it's making me want to hunt out of it, put all that work into it. And, we had decent hunting when you were there, but, after you left, we really got into them. And a buddy of mine said that I had kind of a proud daddy moment those last 3 days, and we shot limits of greenheads for 3 days in a row. It was awesome.
Yeah, nothing like it. Nothing like it. That's waterfowl hunting, right? It's all being in the right place at the right time. That's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, right place, right time, and the stuff in between. It's still great. We may have not crushed limits of greenheads or shot limits of greenheads before you were there. It was still a great time. We still seen some pretty cool stuff. And, anytime you get to hunt in a boat that's got a 22-inch Blackstone and eat breakfast, that's not a bad thing.
Man, I tell you, those pancakes were awesome that you had, both days.
Yeah,
the pancakes.
The pigs in a blanket, they're not a bad thing.
You have a favorite river hunt you can go back on and say, man, that was really special for whatever reason?
I got two. One was from 2014. Me and my son, who's now 23, going to be 24. We were hunting our way down to Arkansas for the World Championship, and we were hunting with Wayne and a few others. And we had a pod of ducks that were kind of isolated in a given spot of the river, and we weren't hunting the X. We were leaving them be and hunting the edges, and we were milking out, a couple weeks worth of really good hunting. And then the Thanksgiving, it was either Thanksgiving morning or the morning before, we said as a group, we're like, all right, we're all going to be gone. We're not coming back for a couple of weeks, and the water's falling out. They're getting to winter levels up there. We said, hey, let's go hunt them. So we went out and we hunted the X, and we call it 30-30. We killed 30 greenheads in 30 minutes. It was, my little guy was, he was 13, I think at that time, and he was shooting a little SX 320 gauge. And normally being a little guy, you just kind of let him go. I remember having to turn to tell him, I'm like, Ben, you shot enough ducks. It's time for you to put your gun down and let the older guys. And then another one that sticks in my head was the year after the flood, and I'm going to butcher the years. It's like 11 or 12 somewhere.
That was 2011. Yeah, that
sounds right. So it'd have been 11 or 12, like you said, and we were hunting near the hole that we hunted, and it was one of those trips that we didn't kill anything, and we didn't know if we were going to go. My tilt trim wasn't working, and we said let's go, and we went out and we froze our butts off, but we killed 4 limits and we finished bunches of 100 plus, and that one really sticks in my head too, and I got a couple ducks mounted from that one.
I'm just running the scenario of ducks coming down. I got to see these mallards working those cornfields in South Dakota. It's hanging with me. They were just bombing out the sky in big numbers, and it just, man, when you're underneath that as a waterfowl hunter, those memories are, last a lifetime.
They do, man. It's like, so you go hunting, and it doesn't matter if you're in Arkansas, if you're in Missouri, you're in Minnesota, you're in South Dakota, North Dakota, you don't always get them. And in fact, right, you probably get them less times than you do get them. But those days where they're special, that's what keeps you going. If you have 10 bad ones in a row, those days just they stick in your head, and they keep you on it and keep you getting after it.
That's it. 'Cause you're one day closer to that day every time you go out the door. And I tell people, man, you just got to get out there. You got to go.
Yeah,
and do
you
it.
Just, you know what, that cliche saying that you came up with. however many years ago.
Right.
It's
just
not
go, baby.
It's a cliche. Just go, man. You gotta just go. You can't kill them sitting at home on the couch, and you don't get to see a show sitting at home on the couch.
It's true.
It's nature's paradise, man.
And it's being November, man. I'm fired up right now. I just want to throw on some waders and run out the door.
That's right, man. Like this weekend. This weekend's a prime example of just go. If you look at the forecast, it's not anything to get excited about.
Yeah, it doesn't look really ideal. Nothing like what we had just a couple of weeks ago.
No, heck no. But you know what? We're gonna go. We're gonna go fire up the Blackstone. We'll probably shoot some gadwalls and maybe a mallard or two, and maybe we'll get them. Maybe we won't, but we're gonna go no matter what.
That's right, brother. It's all good, man. I can't thank you enough, Mike, for joining me on the podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me on. I can sit and talk duck calling and duck hunting anytime.
No kidding. I can sit here and do this entire day. That's no problem at all.
Like we said, we were hunting the boat. It's like, you kind of got a dream job, man. This is awesome.
I'm not going to complain, Mike. I want to tell you.
No. Yeah.
Nobody would complain in my position if you're a waterfowl junkie. That's for sure. But anyway, well, thanks again, Mike, and man, looking forward to seeing you again in the future.
That's right.
I'd like to thank our audience and thank everybody out there for supporting Ducks Unlimited and wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show and visit ducks.org/DU podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.